Broadcasting from the business capital of the world, this is the Podcast Business News Network. And welcome back, everyone. If you've ever thought about writing a book, have some ideas, maybe it's fiction, maybe it's a self-help book, maybe it's related to your occupation, your job, your passion, or maybe even a children's book, we can help you out with that. We're going to focus on somebody who's written a children's book. We're going to take you through the process with the help of the man behind NFB Publishing in Buffalo. Mark Pogodzinski joins us on the program once again. Hey, Mark, how you doing?
Good. How are you?
Really good. This is the first time, we've gotten together with authors, but I believe this is the first time we've gotten together with an author who has done a book for college children or middle school age, young adults. Who do we have with us?
So we have Christina Waldman with us today, who wrote a middle fiction book. Middle fiction YA is a surprisingly huge genre in terms of fiction. You usually have a series, Harry Potter, Hunger Games, even going back to The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe. It's a big thing, especially in this age where the audience that reads it posts about it. So you can catch fire with YA middle-aged fiction. And we have Christina with us today who wrote a book.
Hey, Christina, welcome.
Hi. Glad to be here.
Now, I heard Mark say YA. Is that young adult? Am I getting that? Is that
yeah.
Right there? Okay. Interesting book. And there are some, I want to say, lessons in the book or themes that come forth, one of them being injustice. Basically, tell us what the book's about.
Okay. Yeah. Well, it's the story of Meredith, dragon princess in the land of Dewey Dare, where dragons rule and the humans work for these dragons. They're vegetarians, and so there's so Meredith fights against the injustice. She's got her band of rebel dragons, and then she's tired of all the distraction, so she wants to try to stop the fighting, and she goes to seek a truth, and then the story goes from there. Yeah.
So Meredith actually takes the side of the humans.
Yeah, she does.
Where'd you come up with this? Like, this is what intrigues me. Where these ideas pop in somebody's head? Like, where did this come from?
Well, I first drafted it in 1983, and I thought I would write about dragons because I thought that would free up the imagination. And then I had seen a statue of a dragon. A man named Bill Loomis was carving it, and I saw it in the process, and he was an interesting guy. He was his legs had been amputated, so he's in a wheelchair, but he's carving a statue of a dragon. Well, okay, so that just made an impression on me, and at the time I felt like my voice was trapped inside that statue. It was just like some kind of inspiration that came to me sort of powerfully, and so that's part of it.
We're your Wi-Fi signal. I spoke too soon earlier. I said everything's great. Now it's a little wonky on the Wi-Fi.
Oh.
I want to ask Mark a question here. Christina started this in the early 80s, and I find it timing is everything. Now, she could have moved forward with the book then, but we didn't have things like Harry Potter that appealed to this demographic and all of that. Mm-hmm. Interesting how she waited, and then it came along around that time. Did you see that, when this book came before you?
No, the time frame worked within the confines of the story, but like a lot of authors will do that. You get inspired earlier in your life, and as you know, life happens and things happen, and you can't come back to that creativity as much as you want, whatever it may be, and it's sometimes it's difficult, especially when you get an inspiration like that. It hits you real quick. You're able to put down some pages, maybe some chapters, but then boom, all these different things factor in. And it's a credit to her that she came back to it and that she came back and worked at it, which is great. And again, every author's story is different. And I find hers to be fascinating. The fact that, 20 years, 30, whatever, however many years, not important. You come back to it and you're able to pick up, and the story's evolved a little bit in your head and the characters may have changed, but you're able to finish that project, which is a fantastic thing.
Christina, was it always back in the back of your head? Like, and even though you didn't deploy the book back in the early 80s, was it still floating there, even over the years? Like, man, I got to do that. Yeah. Oh, I thought of another idea. And they all kind of accumulated, along the way. Did it happen like that?
Well, so I was in law school it was like the summer. It was the summer after the first year of law school when I wrote it. And so then like 10 years passed and I had 3 kids and we got a computer. And so then after the kids went to bed, I would work on revision and editing. And the kids, they were fun. They liked the book and they had a lot of fun with it. And they drew a lot of pictures and helped me, develop it too. And then, the 90s was not a good time to be trying to publish a children's fantasy book. And I did put it away for long time. and then after I had a nonfiction book published in 2015. And, just to get a book published is not an easy thing. So, you feel pretty successful, like maybe anything can happen. And so then I decided that I would try to get the children's book published again. And so, and it needed, it wasn't bad maybe, but it benefited from editing. And I think maybe, I mean, when I wrote the first draft, it came pretty easily. And a lot of that I kept. A lot of that language, but a lot of new ideas. New ideas came, but after 40 years, you feel like it is time. You can't hold on to it any longer. That was part of it. I think I didn't want to let it go into the world, and then my gosh, and then you have to write another book if you do that. So.
And when you got it, Mark, what needed to be done in terms of tweaks, editing, that kind of thing? That was the first time I believe that we featured a young adult type book here.
With this book, there were some interior pictures that were very nice, and we wanted to make sure that we could highlight those and make sure that they fit within the context of the plot. And then with this one, you want to pay attention to like a little more detail orientated, the text size, the space between the lines, the font itself. And with Christina, there was a lot of decision making with that. And I think that adds to a middle grade fiction book because kids are going to respond to something a little bit different. They're going to want to see that the book is somehow special. And I think a lot of those decisions factored into making that book what it eventually became, even down to like the background color on the cover. You want to make it bright. You want to make it impactful. You don't want to dull it too much. And then the image itself with the bright green to draw the eye. So there are different factors, especially with the YA and the middle fiction books, that you want to grab the attention of a child. And that's important. Even maybe more so than with children's books, like picture books, because those are, designed that way. With this, you're, between the ages of, say, 13 and 19, what draws the eye for that audience? And so a lot of those decisions factored into making this book.
You got to the territory where I wanted to pick up from, and that is the illustrations. Am I seeing this correctly, Christina? You did them?
No, my daughter, Lane, my middle offspring, Lane.
Ah, okay.
Yeah.
Wow.
I just always wanted Lane to do it. And, that was part of the thing was like, I had to convince Lane to do it. And Lane would say, well, Mom, you're using me as an excuse for not, finishing your book, and that was true, so I'm just so happy that it finally, Lane and I got to do the book together.
Wow.
I mean, I love the illustrations.
How wonderful that is, having your daughter illustrate the book. How did that work? That synergy? Like, did she look at the story, come up with a drawing, or did you say, all right, this is what I'm thinking. Can you do this? And then she created it.
Well, the kids had always done all these illustrations, so I pretty much just let her have a free hand with it. And she would send me, maybe 1 year for Christmas, she'd send me an illustration. And then, time would pass. Maybe the next year I'd get another one. And so, that's how it was. And then I was, like beg and plead for please one more. And, and then, yeah, that's how it was.
Wow. Is this your first book?
Well, it's my first fiction book. Yeah, I wrote a book about it's Francis Bacon's Hidden Hand in Shakespeare's The Merchant of Venice, and that was published in 2018 by Algora Publishing in New York.
Gotcha. If you could have added anything to this story, let's say after the fact, it's published, did you think anything like, oh, wait, I could have done that, or I could have added that, or I could have added that, or were you satisfied? Like, I'm good. That's the way it should have been.
Well, Mark was very, very patient with letting me edit very, very late in the process. Whatever I wanted to change, he was changing it. And he was a perfect person for me to work with on this, honoring my creative process. And like very, very late, I thought, well, I might have done one thing differently, but didn't matter all that much. And it just seemed like it would be wrong to ask. And I told him about it. I said, it's all right. We'll just leave it. It's all right. Yeah. Yeah. So.
You know what I'm learning here is that every author has a different mode of operation. And your job, Mark, as a publisher, you have to adapt to it. Some here's the whole story, here you go. And, go through, edit, make the tweaks, and then publish. Others are a work in progress, and then you have to adapt to that. Do I have that right? Does it seem that way?
Again, every author has their different process, and a good editor and hopefully a good publisher doesn't interfere with the process to the point where they stop, where so many suggestions or no, that can't be done with your book. You want to make sure that they have a free hand to produce the book that they've always envisioned. Grammatically correct, spelling correct, the little things that I can help along the line. But for me, it's the author's vision that's first and foremost. And you want to make sure that you honor that to the best of your abilities. And I think most publishers hopefully will do that, especially like small publishers like myself, where you can say, all right, take your time. If you're not ready, you're not ready. I'm here when you are. If there's something that you want to change, let's go change it. Because in the end, it's your book. It's your name on it. And it should be exactly the way, to the best of our abilities, that you want it. And I think that makes for a better book. It makes for a better read. And I think a lot of readers will see that. When you read Christina's book, you can see the passion in it. And hopefully you can see the drive it took to make it, and the images and how lovingly they're rendered. And that little details, like I say, about the font, those were thoughtful decisions back and forth until we landed on the right one that worked for her. And I think that's the most rewarding thing for me, as a publisher to produce that final product. And the person's like, yes, this is what I've always envisioned. And it's maybe not perfect, but as close as we can possibly get.
Thank you for bringing that up, because I think a lot of people don't realize the detail that goes in. Even you look at a website done right, and some websites are designed to convert. Just giving an example on color and things like that. You could change the color of a button and get many more people to click the button. Mm-hmm. And it's trial and error, it's experience, it's research, it's metrics. Same thing. You look at the book. We want to appeal to a certain demographic. What's going to get that done? Bright orange, certain type of font, the green with the orange. By the way, big fan of orange on my wall, green complements it on another wall. I'm not even kidding. I also do marketing. My logo is green and orange. For me, there's something about it, some kind of excitement that comes off of it. And I'm feeling that you guys were feeling the same thing in the cover of the book, which is predominantly those colors. When you were designing the book, Christina, was it working with your daughter? Did you have to change things up in terms of colors and move things around? I'm fascinated about the art process too.
Well, the image on the cover, I can hold it. I should hold it. I don't know if you see it.
Yeah,
the image on the cover mm-hmm. is Lane's painting, an original painting.
Oh, wow.
And so I played around with different titles, but with that being the cover painting, we just said, okay, we'll just use the old title. It was, I went with the old title, which is from a line in the book. And so, we designed the background around Lane's painting. Yeah, we that was the given there.
So for her to do that painting, obviously she knew that you were working on the book, what the subject was. She probably read some of it and was aware of it. And then was that intentional, that painting for the cover?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Lane grew up with the story. She knows it backwards and forwards. Lane likes green. So.
Fundamental question here. Kind of curious. Why dragons? Why dragons?
Well, when I was going to write this back in 1983, and it just seemed like dragons. I thought, well, if you write about dragons, it'll really free up your imagination. You could write about anything. That was, yeah. And then, having seen this statue of the dragon, Bill Loomis is in Carbondale, Illinois. And I wish I could find him. I wrote to him once, and he wrote back, and I asked him if I could buy the statue, and he said no, because the book might be famous someday. It might be worth money. He wasn't going to sell it. And he might still be alive. He would be older, in his 80s maybe. I'd just like to let him know. Yeah.
Mark, when you got this book, a few years ago, knowing that the thought came from 1983, dragons became uber popular years later. Did you think that, that Chrissy was ahead of her time?
In hindsight, probably. Right now, if you look at like YA or middle fiction, I think of the top 25, 15 are dragon or have some sort of dragon character in them.
Wow.
Again, you have like, for the older people, George R.R. Martin and the Game of Thrones, that it's really blown up with that idea of those fanciful characters, those creatures, and bringing them into the mainstream. In 1983, you didn't really have that. That wasn't there. And since that time, middle grade fiction, that YA fiction, it's a monster market, and everyone is trying to look for the next big trend. Sci-fi fantasy is the cornerstone of that genre. Yeah. It works on so many levels: dystopian future, fantasy, and everyone's trying to find the next Harry Potter. Everyone wants that series because it's a money-making machine. And it's impacted an entire generation's grown up on it. My generation, we grew up on the movie Star Wars, and I read Dune as a kid. But that sci-fi fantasy genre for that, let's call it 10 to 20-year-old audience, that's a massive, massive chunk of the market. And it produces books, comic books, TV, movies. And if you tap into something, that inner child, that inner joy of a dragon flying through the air in your imagination, you really can make an impact on society. And with Christina's book, the notion of working together, of coming together of two wildly different cultures and working toward a common goal. That's a great lesson for kids. And so I thought it worked really well with that book. And, the idea would be, write the series. Who knows what'll happen next? But it was a nice starting point, and I thought the book had a lot going for it.
Thank you for your viewpoint on that, and especially now with our current climate. I don't do politics. I'm just saying, two different sides, common goals, working together. We need a book like that. How does somebody connect with you, Mark? They have an idea of whether it's a children's book, a tween book, fiction, fantasy. How do they connect with you and just even start the conversation if they want to work on something?
You can visit our website at nfbpublishing.com. We're always on the lookout for writing with merit, writing with grit, and a good imagination. So always looking for new writers.
Yep. And you take care of everything from the cover, or, in this case, we had a painting and we made it into a cover that worked to appeal to the demographic, right to the marketing of the book, the editing, the publishing, down to the font, all of that you take care of. Thank you so much for today. Very interesting. Just learning the process, especially for this demographic. Mark and Christy, thanks for being here.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you. NFBpublishing.com. We'll be right back. Broadcasting from the business capital of the world, this is the Podcast Business News Network.
Adopt US Kids presents Multiple Choice Parenting.
Your daughter just had her first breakup. Do you A, put yourself in her shoes?
How could he do this to you? And for Sheila, she has split ends.
B, console her.
Oh, sweetie, this is going to happen a lot. 4, maybe 5 more times before you get married.
C, take charge.
Got to get this all straightened out. Give a little talking to, man to man, mano a mano. Hey, Steve! It's now a good time? No? Okay, no problem. Bye.
Or D, help her find a new boyfriend.
I know a great place to meet boys. The internet. Nice, single boys. Never mind. How about some ice cream?
As a parent, there are no perfect answers. But you don't have to be perfect to be a perfect parent. Thousands of teens in foster care will love you just the same.
For more information on how you can adopt, visit adoptuskids.org. A public service announcement from the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services, Adopt U.S. Kids, and the Ad Council.